Good morning and welcome back, and as promised, now we're going to discuss sports. Poland has performed quite well in this year's Olympics, winning 6 medals thus far. And to discuss major wins and losses, I am joined here today by our very own Jon Carter, sports expert. Good morning, Jon. Delighted to have you with us.
Good morning, Sally. Nice to be here.
So, 6 medals. Is it a lot or is it not enough? How do you assess Poland's performance thus far, and who was most impressive?
Well, I think if we look back to the previous 2 Olympics, where Poland accumulated 14 in Tokyo and then 11 in Rio in 2016. Now, currently on 6, definitely not as many medals. One important thing to say is, of course, we've still got a couple of days left of competition. And it also depends how you're going to perceive success. Is success measured by simply the quantity of medals? Is it measured by the gold medals, which, if you look at the official table, the golds pretty much dictate your position in the medal table? And or is it simply the number of competitors who've looked viable medal contenders? I think generally it's a little bit more disappointing than it has been in previous years, because almost certainly Poland won't reach the same number as the previous 2 Olympics. However, I think a lot of the general perception and the feeling about Poland's success or failure at the Olympics is actually going to be rested largely on Saturday. So the penultimate day of the Olympics, where we have the men's volleyball, and they are playing in the final. And we have Julia Szeremeta, who will also be going for gold in the final in the 57 kilo boxing category. And suddenly, when you jump from 1 medal by Mirosław up to 3, the picture looks a lot more rosy. Now, you said who was the outstanding, you asked, sorry, who was the outstanding athlete for Poland? Well, of course, it's quite obvious that Mirosław leads the way along with Kaluczka in the speed climbing. They were, something else. But I would say this is actually the thing I think we can really take away from Poland's performances thus far in the Olympics is that the successful athletes are really doing it with a little bit of style and panache. Mirosław was breaking the world record. She broke her own world record in the heats twice. So she is undisputed number 1. And, I think she's really brought a real style and garnered a lot of fans through her performance. Not just by winning the gold, but the way in which she's won gold. Going over to Julia Szeremeta in the boxing. Now, her style is really phenomenal, and I think a lot of people are going to be watching. 1, because it's on Saturday. 2, because it's the gold medal fight. And her style is going to shock a lot of people if they haven't seen it before, because she tends to fight with her hands down and without a gum shield as well to protect her teeth. So she really has a quite amazing style. She leaves herself very open and she fights on the counterattack. As for the men's volleyball, again, like doing it in very dramatic fashion, a lot of comebacks, a lot of excitement in their matches. So I think what might be remembered is really the style in which Poland's most successful athletes are winning.
Right, but there were also some disappointments, right? Włodarczyk did not manage to secure a place on the podium, and Iga Świątek got bronze. So I think this was a surprise to many. Any other significant losses and disappointments that you think are worth mentioning? And are these disappointments?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, at the beginning of these Olympics, Poland placed a lot of its medal hopes on sports in water. So that's predominantly canoeing, rowing, kayaking, and a little bit of swimming. And now they have won 2 medals. Yeah, so you have the slalom canoeing and men's quadruple sculls. So there has been a degree of success, but I think people imagined there would be a little bit more success with Carolina Naya and her several teams in the 500 meters. That I think, yeah, generally there was a thought that they would boost the medal tally. Of course, the shot put has been quite a letdown because this was a sport with great Polish tradition and many gold medals in recent history. Um, so has there been disappointments? Yes, of course there have, and like you mentioned, Świątek is the major one. Far be it from me or kind of anybody really to criticise Świątek. She's an absolute phenomenon and easily the best women's tennis player in the world. I just think that perhaps the weight of expectation, given that she's so successful on that particular venue, Roland Garros, and she was going into that tournament as such a red hot favourite. Yeah, unfortunately, I think she just slightly lost her nerve against Zheng in the semis, and so that's a great pity. But the positive, certainly for Świątek, is that she has a few more Olympics in her. We have to remember she's still relatively very young, and I think her time will come again. So I would say, in a broad perspective, has it been disappointing? A little bit. But as I said, when we come around to Saturday night and it's pretty much all over for the Polish major medal hopes, I think then is the best time to draw conclusions about how successful or disappointing it has been. Yeah.
Right, Jon, and let me ask you about some of the controversies surrounding this year's Olympics. For instance, Dorota Borowska was disqualified, and this was highly disputed here in the country. Any other controversies, or perhaps something worth pointing out?
Yeah, of course, there's been endless controversies in this Olympics. I think in previous games we've gone into them a lot, and the focus has been on doping. Now, yes, there have been a few questionable incidents in the swimming, perhaps amongst the certain Chinese swimmers, but let's see how everything tests and etc. afterwards when the dust has settled. So actually, my point is that doping has been far less of an issue. The games themselves have, obviously, there was a controversial opening ceremony that a lot of people found quite offensive, and there was also issues. I suppose the biggest headline grabber has been in the women's boxing, whereby you have 2 competitors, one of whom actually from Taiwan will be fighting Julia Szeremeta on Saturday. So just in case people are unaware, these 2 boxers, Alif and Lin, so an Algerian and a Taiwanese boxer, have both been competing in the women's boxing, and in the World Championships last year in New Delhi, 2 competitors were barred from continuing. They began the tournament but were later barred, and it was said by the organisers that 2 boxers failed tests. So they both came back with XY chromosomes, yes, male chromosomes. Now, we should say that it wasn't directly said which boxers that concerned, but those boxers who a lot of fingers have been pointing at were disqualified from that event. So I don't think it's a great leap or an assumption to suggest that they were the ones who failed these tests. And so I think there's going to be a lot of questions which are going to remain after this over the legitimacy of certain people in certain events and how we test and what is deemed fair, you know, because we've come down, Olympics come down very hard on the doping, rightfully so, but there's a question over unfair advantages. Other things just to point out, I suppose, there was a lot of complaints by swimmers in the beginning of the games about the pool being too shallow. It might seem a little bit innocuous, but actually there haven't really been any world records set, which is a bit of a surprise. And a lot of people have been pointing the finger at the lack of depth in the swimming pool. Other than that, we also had athletes coming down with illness. I think it was in the triathlon, because a lot of suggestions that the River Seine was too polluted to swim in. That was an issue. We saw a couple of days ago in the 5,000 meters, the bizarre sight of a cameraman wandering onto the tracks, almost sort of in a daze, as if nothing was happening, stood walking along with his camera, and suddenly, you know, 15 to 20 5,000 meter runners were charging straight at him, and he kind of almost seriously collided with some of them. So, you know, it's difficult to say whether this Games has brought about more controversy than others before. You know, we kind of, the sands of time allow us to forget some other things. But it certainly felt like a Games which has been dogged by controversy in certain areas, but I would also say has been a success in others, whereby there are certain arenas which have really brought about spectacular atmospheres. A lot of people pointing towards the fencing and several other arenas, the swimming pool, the swimming arena, and a lot of these have really exploited, you know, Paris's wonderful architecture and its ability to encapture the acoustics of these places. You know, a lot of athletes saying, "Oh, we've never been in atmospheres quite like it." So I think this is one thing that the Paris Games has really got right, which is harnessing the atmosphere and bringing and allowing the arenas and places where these events are held to really capture the fervent excitement of the crowds there.
Jon, just a quick question at the end. The opening ceremony was quite controversial as well. So I wonder, shall we expect any surprises when it comes to the closing ceremony?
Good question. To be honest, I am not sure who is responsible for the closing ceremony. Is it the same artist, Frenchman Thomas Joly? Will he be responsible for it, the closing as well as the opening? I'd have to check that. If it is him, perhaps there will be some things which might ruffle a few feathers. If it's not, I really no idea. You would imagine that, given a lot of the uproar and the upset caused, that the sensible thing would be to go for something which is less likely to offend or upset people, and something that very much focused on the sporting aspect of the Games, I think, is always the safest way to go. And yeah, in previous years, the ones which have found the greatest acclaim, be it the opening or closing ceremony, are the ones which hark back to the Greek Games and give a nod to that tradition. And I think that's the thing which kind of will just appease all sides. Yeah, it's the one thing which I think everybody is pleases everyone. A little nod to the past, to the amateurism, to the values of the Games, which of course are largely not so existent in the 21st century, but there is still, at its very essence, these values still do exist to some degree. And I think to put those at the fore would be wise.
Right, actually look forward to seeing it. Jon Carter, a sports reporter, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World. Coming up next is Miss Bullet.